Why do you think people don't know enough about this guy?
For one thing, he moved around so much. He didn't have a certain particular, so to speak, hunting area.
We don't know if he was just happened to be traveling through and done this, or what connection he really had here.
There's really no Kentucky connection in our case file. There's no Texas. So it was like, well, again, is this some drifter who has no connection to either state? We were correct.
When Robert Brashears was traveling through your town, it wasn't clear if he was there to steal a car, rob a restaurant, or look for another victim. Brashears truly was, as we just heard stated, a serial killer without a hunting area. So trying to figure out where other possible victims might be is no easy task. One possible clue could come from the regular life Brashears pretended to live outside of his crimes. Do a quick Google search and you'll see he worked in construction. But dig a little deeper and you'll find a man who seemingly started off with a bright future, only to sabotage it. A man who jumped from job to job, leaving little to no impression behind. And a man so unsure of himself, he thought about ending it all months before that standoff in a Missouri motel room. Because just like the investigators tracking his crimes, Robert Brashears had no idea where he was going.
So what if it was just a drifter, and that's why nobody knows him?
You walk in and see what someone has done to them?
I don't know how we kept missing him. He just fell through every crack there was.
I'm just a firm believer that there's more cases out there.
My mother would leave for work and tell us, do not let him out of the house.
He doesn't always stick to the same weapons. He doesn't always do things the same way.
At the end of the day, it's for the girls. So you need to make damn sure you've got all the answers.
I'm Kathy Sweeney. This is Chasing a Ghost, Chapter 10, No Set Path. This episode contains references to murder, sexual assault, and suicide that may be considered disturbing for some listeners. Please listen with care. Long before Robert Brashears became the yogurt shop suspect in Austin, Texas, investigators in southeast Missouri knew they were dealing with a killer who would be hard to track. Highway Patrol Master Sergeant Chris Hamlet is part of the multi-state team trying to do that right now.
He's transient. He is a transient career criminal. And basically whatever crossed his mind, he was going to do it.
Hamlet and his partner, Sergeant Alex Lacey, both worked on the Sherry and Megan Shear case. They know it did not take long for lead investigator Bud Cooper and his team to determine the mother and her 12-year-old daughter were likely shot to death in 1998 in their own home by a stranger.
I think from talking to Sergeant Cooper, I think that was always a thought, especially after the initial couple weeks into the investigation.
And
with the tie
Dyersburg.
to Dyersburg, is that you couldn't link those two together to make it make any sense. So the writing was kind of on the wall that this has to be a random killing.
Especially with the location right there, literally on the interstate.
Yeah.
And that same stranger had tried to force his way into a home with children in Dyersburg, Tennessee, just hours later. Here's Sergeant Bud Cooper talking about the connection between the crimes in 2017.
Certainly you would think that there were similarities, that he's using some type of ruse to talk to Sherry and Megan, or they're separated and he pulls the gun on one or the other.
Leads in the Shear case also reinforced the transient nature of the killer they were searching for. First, a DNA match in 2006 took them back to 1990 and over to South Carolina, where they also learned their killer did not just shoot his victims or target children to sexually assault. He had also assaulted, beat, and strangled a 28-year-old woman. This is retired Highway Patrol Captain Phil Gregory.
When we had those two, both of those households in Portageville and Dyer County had children in them, and there was evidence outside with toys and so on that there were kids in the house. So the theory at that point was that they were targeted because of something the suspect saw driving down the road, and then enter in 06 Jenny Zatricki, and that's an eye-opening thing that, wait, it's not all about kids after all.
And then in 2017, another community and another curveball. Their killer had sexually assaulted another young girl, a 14-year-old, in front of her frightened family in Memphis, Tennessee. And it happened 1 year before the Scheer murders.
Good morning. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for attending this today.
On October 5th, 2018, with genetic genealogy and a court-ordered exhumation, authorities announced they had unearthed their long-dead transient serial killer, Robert Eugene Brashears, linking Brashears to 3 crimes in 3 states that had no other connection, had taken 20 years. Now, these same Southeast Missouri investigators, many of them retired, understand what authorities in Austin, Texas, and other states are up against when it comes to tracking Robert Brashears. Here's current Portageville Police Chief Freddie Hill and former New Madrid County Sheriff Terry Stevens.
Yeah, he didn't stay in one place very long. He kept on the move.
I would say the authorities in Austin didn't know anything about our case until we got the match. They never, during their investigation, thought, I wonder if this is a guy that done those ones up in Missouri and out in South Carolina.
No, but Detective Jackson brought that up to me and said he wished he would have heard of him.
I tried to get it out into the media as much as possible.
Detective Jackson is Dan Jackson, the Austin cold case detective credited with finding the evidence linking Robert Brashears to the 1991 yogurt shop murders.
And surprisingly, he wasn't anywhere in our case file as a tip to look at. And we've got every serial killer in America we've looked at.
Except for him.
Except for him.
Jackson told me, if he's being honest, he doesn't remember even hearing Brashears' name before DNA linked Austin's quadruple murder case to the 1990 murder of Jenny Zatricki.
It's not like a unique name that you're going to never forget.
Right.
So I may have totally saw a news story on it and just didn't remember the name Robert Brashears. I wasn't in homicide at the time, so I was just, it's very possible.
Is now the time that people should know this man's name?
Yeah, I think so. Especially with how much we can do with less when it comes to DNA. You've got these cases that were unsolvable a few years ago because the amounts were too low. What they can do with genealogy now is in the picograms, and they can do it with mixtures that wasn't even possible a year ago. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be revisited to be like, because he's probably, well, like I said, we know he's good for more.
The more crimes Robert Brashears may be good for could have been committed a long time ago, anywhere from the mid-70s to the late 90s, when you take out his 2 stints in prison. The key windows of time investigators are focused on can be sectioned off almost by the decade. The mid to late 70s, the early to mid 80s, and then 1989 to the early 90s, plus the last 2 years of his life, from February 1997 to January 1999.
It was a lot easier to cover your tracks, especially when you're crossing state lines to offend and nobody knows you, and we don't have 24-hour CNN and Facebook and everything isn't plastered in your face 24/7. So, yeah, I'm sure that's how he got away with it for so long, is he was changing things up that way.
Well, we know he was in the Navy in 76.
For about 10 months.
Yeah.
But from like the obituary in New Orleans to his arrest in Florida, we really don't have a lot on him.
But thanks to his daughter, Deborah, I can tell you about a much younger Robert Brashears. Not only about where he was, but the direction his life seemed to be heading. Deborah recently received copies of her father's naval records, and she shared them with me. And you may be shocked to hear they actually reveal a bright young man on what appears to be the start of a solid military career. But that career quickly fell apart. Robert Eugene Brashears enlisted in the Navy in El Paso, Texas on March 31, 1976. Brashears had just turned 18 and should have still been in high school. But his naval records indicate he graduated early and had a graduation letter attached to his application. They also show he would have been considered an above-average recruit based on his mental and aptitude test scores. According to online information provided by the Office of Veterans Affairs, Category 2 recruits like Brashears were often considered for specialized roles in the aviation, intelligence, or advanced mechanical fields. Brashears' enlistment application also gives us a glimpse into his teenage years. He spent his sophomore and junior years at Butler High School in Huntsville, Alabama, where he participated in junior ROTC. Deborah gave me 2 photos of her father from that time. Both are group photos. In the first, Brashears stands in a ceremonial uniform, complete with a parade cap, white ascot, and gloves. He is holding a rifle and staring into the camera. In the second photo, he is in a Class A uniform with a black tie, garrison hat, and gold shoulder cord. He is also looking straight ahead at the camera. Robert Brashears' naval application shows he worked 3 jobs as a teenager in Huntsville: at Manpower, at a local pizza place, and at a business that sold CB radios. In 1975, Brashears moved to South Bend, Indiana, where he spent his shortened senior year at John Adams High School. His application also reveals some minor brushes with the law: a parking ticket in South Bend and a speeding ticket in Niles, Michigan, both in 1975. And he admitted to experimenting with marijuana, but signed a statement rejecting the use of it and other drugs. After he begins serving in the Navy, Brashears' records show he is advanced in July 1976 from an airman recruit to an airman apprentice. Brashears also completed some kind of aviation course just a few days earlier. But in August, his records hint at the first sign of trouble. And I found some added context on this in the Scheer case file. There's a brief report in the file indicating one of the Southeast Missouri investigators reviewed Brashears' naval records, and it looks like they had access to a few records Deborah did not receive. So piecing together what I have and what's described in the Scheer report, I can tell you the Navy sent Robert Brashears to a naval training station in Memphis, Tennessee from July to August 1976 for training. That's where he completed that aviation course. But on August 2nd, Brashears was enrolled in what's described as a basic electronics course. And just 8 days later, he dropped out for what's listed in his records as lack of motivation. The Navy transferred Robert Brashears to the USS Lexington in Pensacola, Florida in September 1976. But the Scheer investigator also described Brashears as communicating his desire to leave the Navy around this same time, reporting symptoms that included depression and acid indigestion. Now let's pause here for a moment. You may have already picked up on something I realized when I first reviewed these records. Brashears' very short naval career started in Texas, sent him to Memphis, and then to Florida, all locations of his later crimes. And he's on the USS Lexington, named after the same Revolutionary War battle as the city of Lexington, Kentucky, site of what's believed to be Brashear's final murder. Maybe it's a coincidence, but it sure doesn't feel like one. Back to the records. On November 10th, a medical officer sent a psychiatrist consultation on Robert Brashears to several naval officials, along with a note recommending administrative separation for what was known at the time as inadequate personality disorder. According to the VA, a discharge like that back in the mid-70s was commonly used to remove sailors who demonstrated an inability to adapt to military life. The short memo recommending Brashears be discharged ends with the sentence, "It is felt that his problems will not resolve themselves with time." Robert Brashears was made aware of his honorable discharge from the Navy on December 8, 1976. Brashears checked and initialed the box on a Statement of Awareness form, waiving the right to make a statement on his own behalf. So we don't have anything from him in any of the reports explaining why he wanted out of the Navy so soon after he joined. Brashears' honorable discharge officially took place on December 10th. He signed his name to several administrative remarks in his final paperwork, including one that reads, "Not eligible for reenlistment due to unsuitability, personality disorders."